The Dallas Mavericks continue their disturbing trend of playing down to their competition after losing to the Sacramento Kings for the second time in 8 days. This is the Gray Area right here on Kevin Gray Sports. My name is Kevin Gray. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. The Dallas Mavericks fall 113-106 to the Sacramento Kings, where they shoot just 28% from the three-point line in this game and allow the worst defense in all of the NBA in the Sacramento Kings to hold them to just 106 points. At one point, the Dallas Mavericks were down 31-13 in the first quarter alone after the Kings had put together an 18-1 run to race out to a 20-3 lead. Rashawn Holmes was absolutely spectacular in this game, a potential free agent target for the Mavericks. He went 9 of 12, had 24 points in this game. Meanwhile, Harrison Barnes, before leaving with an adductor strain, he played well with 19 points. The Dallas Mavericks seem to be in a crossroads when it comes to playing against inferior competition. And for the second time in 8 days, the Sacramento Kings met them at that crossroads and beat them again. Luka Doncic was asked after the game about why this team continues to play with the lackluster energy in the first quarters needed to try and not play catch-up in games. Here is what Luka Doncic had to say.
I don't know. I don't know, but it's been a lot of games. I don't know what to say, but we just gotta keep playing like we played the last 3 games, not like today, and we just gotta keep playing like that.
So Luka Doncic is saying, look, we have to play with more energy. But honestly, that's a message that's clearly falling on deaf ears, as Rick Carlisle was clearly frustrated in his post-game press conference with talking about the idea that this team needs to get off to better first quarter starts. This is a team that saw Tim Hardaway shoot just 3 of 12 from the three-point line. You did have a nice Trey Burke sighting where he did not play in his last 6 games prior to playing against the Sacramento Kings. He played well. Luka Doncic, Trey Burke, and Boban Marjanovic combined for all 35 points in the second quarter to get them back into the game. But ultimately, the Dallas Mavericks were not able to get stops down the stretch, poor shot selection from the three-point line, and ultimately an inability to execute against a Sacramento King team that played with much more energy after coming off of a back-to-back and were able to beat the Dallas Mavericks. This continues a disturbing trend of first quarter starts in the month of April. The Mavericks are a negative 31-point differential in first quarters in the beginning of April. They are now 11-13 when playing against opponents with a 500 record or worse. They are fortunate to still be in the 6th spot right now as the Portland Trail Blazers continue their free fall in the Western Conference standings. But more so than anything else, the Mavericks, in a maddening season where they had played Jekyll and Hyde at times, at one point a team that had lost 6 straight, that had lost 10 of 13 games, and then went through a stretch where they went 19-7 in a 26-game stretch that gave them the 4th best record in all of the NBA. In these last 2 games prior to playing against the Sacramento Kings, they had beaten the Los Angeles Lakers and had a 17-point comeback in the previous game. This is the kind of maddening season that the Mavericks have put their fans through all season long. And yes, I know there was no Kristaps Porzingis, there was no JJ Redick, there was no Josh Richardson. Maxi Kleber did not play in the second half as he continues to deal with his lower back contusion. But more importantly, this is a team in the Mavericks that finds themselves having a message fall on deaf ears from Rick Carlisle. I asked Rick Carlisle after the game, what does this team have to learn about itself when playing against inferior competition to try and get themselves better? Here's what Rick Carlisle had to say after the game.
Rick, how does this team continue to learn and grow from these kinds of experiences where obviously any team can get beat on a given night, but getting off to better starts and playing against competition that's a little bit less and being better in those situations?
Well, there's rarely growth without setbacks and without some level of failure here and there. And look, we had 3 good wins, and that was great. And I think human nature got us a little bit too. Sac played last night, no Fox, no Bagley. Those things are hard to factor, how your team is exactly going to feel about, playing in that type of situation. But look, it's an NBA basketball game, and you step between the lines there's going to be a high level of competition. I don't care who the team, I don't care what their record, any of that stuff. So look, this is one we got to learn from. We're still a young team. We're not an excuse team, and I try not to get into a lot of that stuff, but this has got to be another thing that we learn from.
So Rick Carlisle saying, look, these are things that we have to learn and grow from. This is a young basketball team. Their average age on this team is 27 years old, but still at the same time going through the growing pains. Even with a guy in Dorian Finney-Smith in his last 15 games who's been shooting over 50% from the field, shooting over 47% from the three-point line. All of these players are continuing to develop and grow and learning how to be more consistent when it comes to playing these games. You say, Kevin, that shouldn't be the case when this team made the playoffs a season ago, took the Clippers to 6 games, and we thought expectations for this team was going to be much higher coming into this year, and you wouldn't see the kind of up and down nature for this team. I thought so too. But at the same time, this has been a very weird season with a compressed schedule, a difficult travel schedule, the amount of back-to-backs, and the amount of load management that this team seems to be engaged in to try and get themselves healthy as they get toward the playoffs. But this game is inexcusable because now you've lost 2 games to the Sacramento Kings. You've lost 2 games to the 15th place Houston Rockets. You've also lost 1 game against the 13th place Oklahoma City Thunder, and you've lost a game to the 11th place New Orleans Pelicans. That just gives you an idea of the competition and the way the Mavericks have played down to their competition this season. It's inexcusable for a team that has a top 5 player in all of the NBA and Luka Doncic, but more so than anything, this is on a supporting cast who played well off the bench, i.e. Boban Marjanovic, also Trey Burke. You also got some really nice minutes and energy from a guy in Josh Green. But you simply cannot walk into Sacramento and let this team beat you on a back-to-back for the second time in 8 days with no De'Aaron Fox at all, who had 30 points in the last meeting at the American Airlines Center, and find yourself playing with the kind of consistency that you need to down the stretch, especially when you have the second easiest schedule in all of the NBA in the final 14 games of this season. So now, for a Dallas Mavericks team that finds themselves still, yes, in the 6th seed, need to be much more consistent as they get ready to take on the Golden State Warriors and the Detroit Pistons on the road. Because let me remind you, this was a Golden State Warrior basketball team back on February 4th that blew the doors off of the Dallas Mavericks in a 31-point beatdown. Then the Mavericks were able to win the second game of the series. So you're looking at a rubber match between these 3 teams to determine the season series winner, which is obviously critically important when you start thinking about the Western Conference standings. I asked Trey Burke after the game, when a message like starting early and better in first quarters isn't resonating, what do veteran players have to do to try and hold themselves accountable to ensure that the message is getting across? Here's what Trey Burke had to say.
Hey, Trey, as a veteran in this league, when a team seems to struggle with a particular issue, sometimes in this situation with energy at the start of games, how does each individual try to hold each other accountable when a message seems like at times it's not resonating the way it should be?
I think you got to take the personal feelings and emotions out. A lot of guys on this team know what they can do, and we have a lot of skill sets. So sometimes, if it's not rolling for you that night and you kind of in your own head about made shots and missed shots, we kind of get in our own way. And I think that's where we can do a better job of holding each other accountable because we know what we can do. We know if, like let's take for a guy like Dodo or Timmy, if they're missing a couple of shots, we can't dwell on the misses. We have to keep doing what we're supposed to be doing on defense, knowing that those same type of shots are going to come back, and you just got to be ready to hit them. And we didn't do that tonight, but tomorrow we got another opportunity for that.
So Trey Burke saying, look, we've got to hold each other accountable. We've got to be much better in making sure that we are all on the same page. And that clearly has not been the case, especially for a team that plays down to its competition, which is unfortunate because these are the kinds of things that you deal with in the ebbs and flows of a season. A team at times that has looked very good against the Los Angeles Lakers and beating them in their 2 games inside the American Airlines Center, but also a team that's looked poor against teams like the San Antonio Spurs, where you let DeMar DeRozan walk into your building in the second half and scores 27 of his 33 points in the second half. You lose on the road to the Houston Rockets. You lose a game to the Oklahoma City Thunder. You lose to the New Orleans Pelicans. You cannot consider yourself a true Western Conference contender if you cannot beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. But more importantly, what's concerning is that this Mavericks team and Luka Doncic at times seems to play down to the competition and seems disinterested in playing against lower competition. When you're playing in a compressed 72-game schedule where every game means everything in this season and you're dealing with a shorthanded squad in your own without Kristaps Porzingis, without Josh Richardson, without JJ Redick, who were all missing in this game. Kristaps Porzingis missing his second straight game with an ankle sprain, JJ Redick dealing with heel soreness, and Josh Richardson dealing with hamstring tightness. You have to be able to play up to the competition because they need you to not combine with Tim Hardaway Jr. to go 16 of 40 from the field, not to attack a Sacramento King basketball team that's the worst defensive team in the NBA and get outscored by 8 at the free throw line. Completely inexcusable in this game. And again, another maddening loss for a team that should not be in this position playing down to the competition. It's a learning experience, a growing experience, but more importantly, it shows a sign of immaturity. You say, Kevin, well, you were the one that said when they went on their 4-1 road trip, especially having quote-unquote mature wins against the New York Knicks when they beat them and only held them to 86 points, that this was a maturing basketball team. And I felt that way at the time. But this team has continuously shown the Jekyll and Hyde nature, the inconsistency in playing against inferior competition, that this team simply isn't ready to make the kind of leap that they should have been able to make this coming season because of what we saw from them this past season and playing against the Golden State Warriors, against the Los Angeles Clippers in the playoffs. But here we are. This Mavericks team now has to be in a position where they've got to go to Golden State, get a win there, and then get a win on Detroit before coming back home to take on a very hot Washington Wizards basketball team where they had the Eastern Conference Player of the Week in Bradley Beal as against the Luka Doncic, who had a Western Conference Player of the Week win again this season. We'll see. But more importantly than anything else, this should be a learning experience, as we've seen, unfortunately, all this season for the Mavericks, that they have got to be better and get up for games and for teams that they are supposed to be. Otherwise, this is not the kind of team that gives you confidence going forward that the maturity is in fact there, because the way that they played against the Sacramento Kings and the lackluster energy that they came out with, simply inexcusable. We'll see if they can get themselves together as they take on the Golden State Warriors and then the Detroit Pistons before becoming home to take on the Washington Wizards. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube, and you can catch me on your home of the Cowboys and Texas Rangers, 105.3 The Fan. This has been another episode of The Gray Area. We'll talk to you later. Peace.